FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. Happy Monday. It is the last day of April in 2018. Well, been watching what's going on in D.C., no doubt. Before we get started, as always, we love to get your emails in the email inbox in the morning. Just write to kl@kerrylutz.com. So is there a coup, a silent coup going on in Washington? What of Comey? What of Clapper? And what of Brennan, the triumvirate heads of the intelligence agencies under Obama, of questionable loyalty, of unquestioned incompetence, and of pretty dim intellect? Well, hey, you want to get the latest info? You need the latest info to figure out what the heck's going on. Go to billstill.com or just look up on YouTube the Still Report. Bill, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. That was pretty well said. Pretty good intro. The topic ahead.
Hey, well, what do you think of these guys? Are they a bunch of jokers? Does Comey have a get-out-of-jail-free card? Because it seems to me every public event that he goes to pushing his book, Higher Loyalty or whatever it was called, it's a ridiculous book, but every time he opens his mouth, he seems to be incriminating himself more and more each time.
Yeah, I think they've lived life with this get-out-of-jail-free card, as you said, but hopefully that's coming to an end. Like my wife says, I'll believe it when we see the first person taken away in handcuffs, because to date we've seen none of that, and which is a shame. I don't know what Sessions is doing, but he's not doing his job.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at Sessions. Number one is he ain't too bright. He's a Southern boy. He's not too motivated, and he can't get out of his own way. The other way to look at it, and perhaps might even be true, is that he's slow playing it, getting all the facts together to take out all of these deep state actors, including the 3 former intelligence heads under Obama. And he's building a case, and he's doing it in conjunction with the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, and along with certain heads of congressional committees like Devin Nunes and Charles Grassley, et cetera. And I kind of vacillate myself, Bill, going back and forth between the 2.
I know. That's exactly what I've been doing also. I've been supporting Sessions all the way through, but, it's kind of getting to the late stages here. And at the very least, don't you think somebody, just to whet our appetite, should have been arrested? But we aren't even close to that. We haven't even had indictment number 1. Yeah. 0.
I agree. Well, at least go arrest Stormy Daniels for something. I mean, she's got to have committed a felony. I'm sure she commits multiple felonies every day. Arrest her. Just do something, I mean, she could be our next president if we're not careful.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know what to think of it, but there was a very interesting story that Greg Hunter did. He put it up yesterday with a former CIA whistleblower, Kevin Shipp. And I use the quotes because there are very few people who will come right out and say this is a coup. And I think I was the first one to ever call it a coup, mainly because I have some experience with a previous coup d'etat attempt that was completely hidden from the American people, namely during the time of the Watergate. And so these people didn't go away. They just had to regroup. Of course, they had their way when Obama was in, so no coup was necessary. But now that Obama's gone, they're moving just as desperately and as quickly as they can before the last remnant of the Obama holdovers that have their claws still clawed into the American intelligence community database and network is removed. And so I think that's what's going on. And I guess Sessions' slow walking thing, if that's really what's going on, I hope that's what's going on. But, even Joe DeGenova says that that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to put these guys before a grand jury in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
put them under oath, and none of that's happened as far as we know.
As far as we know, but what we do know,
that's true.
What we do know is that he appointed this guy Huber, who is the U.S. attorney for Utah, to sit with the Inspector General Michael Horowitz of the DOJ and basically work with him as crimes are exposed throughout their investigation. So, maybe something's happening. I'm not convinced yet, but I'm not.
Well, he released the McCabe portion of the IG report, and the hypothesis was that as soon as those individual sections of the IG's report were released, that would be followed by indictments. So where are they?
Well, certainly those findings were pretty shocking, although not to you and me because we've been following this all along. But something's happening there, because the people who were really at the thick of the coup, that was Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. I don't know.
Strzok and Page, yeah.
Strzok and Page, they're still working there, but one guy, Strzok, is in human relations for a counterintelligence guy. What the heck is he doing in human relations? So they're basically talking. They're singing an interesting tune. So it would appear, right? Don't you think they're still there? And all the people who have left the FBI and the DOJ over the past 6 months seems to indicate that something is happening.
I hope you're right. That's all I can say at this point. I mean, why is Strzok and Page, why are they even in the building? They can, theoretically, I suppose, deny them access to the classified network, but they would have to if they're really not going to be effective. As long as, and now we're coming out and seeing that at some point they got wise to the fact that their texts could be subpoenaed, and so they started using a variety of different communication modality, which I didn't even know existed, that exist within Gmail.
Oh yeah,
that for some reason make it very difficult to subpoena those. And so as long as you've got that type of mentality, where they create their own networks, dark networks, why are they in the building?
Yeah, because they're talking, because there's a deal. There's a deal.
So what? They can talk from their home.
I think they want them there, for easy access. It's not like, hey, we'll see you tomorrow at the grand jury. It's like, we're going over to the grand jury in 15 minutes, get your jacket on.
Man, I hope you're right. I hope you're right, but I'm starting to see more. There are more scenarios to where they've got something on Sessions, and he's gonna, he's participating in the foot dragging than there were a month ago, and I'm not liking it.
Yeah, well, I totally understand your thinking there, and I'm certainly not disagreeing with you. Anything is possible with this stuff, but the fact that it's come out the way that it has, Bill, is pretty remarkable, isn't it? The look at the inner workings of how these guys do things.
Well, you have to remember another thing, though. Their modus operandi is to try to put a firewall around who they think they can't defend, and then pretend to defend them if they can keep it away from the bigger fish. And the bigger fish in this case, I've had a security clearance almost all my adult life, and the people who have dealt with secured stuff are outraged by the mere fact that Hillary Clinton put on a private server thousands of not just classified material, but TS and compartmentalized TS, top secret stuff. Those are all individual felonies, and nobody has even breathed a word that she'll be held accountable. And until that happens, then I do not believe that this was fully investigated and prosecuted.
Yeah, well, but it just looks like they're moving towards it. Granted, on the public side, very slowly. But what about Giuliani coming into the picture to negotiate with Mueller? What's the purpose of that, do you think?
Well, he's not there to negotiate with Mueller so much as he's there to negotiate with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, because he's known all those guys all his life. All those guys grew up under him. They probably owe him favors. And so he's the absolute perfect person for that. Mm-hmm. This thing about the break-in of Michael Cohen's office, and, this is what I was just writing. I was trying to get this story up before we did your interview, but I did not succeed. I'm close. It'll be up later today. This thing with the break-in at Cohen's office also coincided with a break-in Murdoch's office in London. And who did that break-in? Was it the British authorities? No. Guess what? It was EU authorities under the meme or whatever, under the excuse that Murdoch was being a monopolist. He was monopolizing the media in the United Kingdom, and so therefore his office deserved to be broken into and have everything torn out and taken away.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
These were EU authorities. This is New World Order stuff. Mm-hmm. That happened within 24 hours of the Cohen thing. And so, the UK thing didn't hit this side of the Atlantic because we were busy with the Cohen thing, and vice versa in the UK. It was a perfect media play, a perfect setup. Mm-hmm. To minimize the coverage. Agreed.
There's a lot of creepy things going on, but let's never forget it is Washington, D.C. Things happen in slow motion, but they do actually happen once in a while. So
I know
how far we are from it, I don't know. None of us could be sure of, but I think something is going on there. Just my gut instinct, but how much? Who it will net? My guess is Hillary isn't going to go down, and neither is Obama. But everybody up to them is fair game, and potentially might go down. I don't know. What's your thought about North Korea? The way Trump handled that. I mean, 25 years we've had abject failure in our dealings with North Korea. This guy comes in a year, and he's got them sitting down. And by all appearances, without knowing further, it looks like Kim Jong-un really does want to do something here. It seems like he's ready.
Right. I mean, as long as his life is protected, why not? I mean, he can be the big hero to his version of Korea in the North, and Korea in general. In the South as well, as he can turn North Korea completely around into a wealthy nation, because that's how China did it, by essentially using cheap labor, slave labor, and there are enough companies worldwide to pour in there and employ those people, and he'll be a hero for it. I think it is difficult even for CNN to find a way to criticize Trump in this.
Yeah, and now he's on to changing the Iranian deal, and you think he's going to meet with success on that like he did on Korea?
Well, that's more difficult because you've got the Russians involved as well. They've been the supporters of Iran for a long time. I know a lot about Iran, and finally I just quit appearing on their TV and radio because I just couldn't do it. I used to have to go into the security officer every time and say, hey, the Iranian TV guys called me again. Is it okay for me to do this thing? And he'd say, yeah, well, we're used to you. Go ahead. But this death to America stuff, I just can't stand it. Finally, I got to the point I just said, I'm sorry. I can't.
Yeah. When in doubt, yell death to America, right?
Free Persia is what I told them, but I cannot support this mullah-dominated theological dictatorship.
Theocracy. There's a reason the founding fathers said, it would be a good idea to have separation of church and state. Not that you can't say, thank God in your office if you're a government employee, but not having the church, whatever church it is, or synagogue, calling the shots. And in fact, a really interesting thing is when the U.S. was negotiating to bring Utah into the Union, there was a big stink over the fact that the Mormon church ran the state, and they kept forcing them, putting off their statehood, and kept slicing the state up. Like Nevada was part of Utah, but because they wouldn't agree to, have the church step back, they split it off and it became its own state. And there's I think there's 2 or 3 times that happened. So separation of church and state, really is a positive thing, because otherwise you wind up with what we saw in Europe for hundreds of years and what we see in the Middle East now, a horrible, intractable situation where there are no human rights in Iran, in Iraq, in all of these countries. They exist strictly as a piece of the state, a pawn of the state, to be done with whatever the state so chooses. And
there's no rule of law. There's only the law of the jungle.
Yeah. So
that's what separates civilization from lesser forms of governmental rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so he's got his work cut out for him. But so far, how would you grade President Trump?
Are you kidding? A triple plus.
Well,
we've never had a politician at any level. As good as President Trump in my lifetime. And I've been following politics since the 7th grade. And I hate to tell you who was president then.
Are you going to tell me Eisenhower? Or Kennedy?
Yeah, actually.
Eisenhower? Well, that's.
I watched the last Eisenhower Republican convention on TV. That was the first year my parents had a television.
Oh my goodness! Well, all right. Well, hey, you got a couple on me, because I basically was born during Eisenhower and don't really remember much till LBJ became president. And, from that point on, I was pretty involved, not in politics, just in following events. So, but what do you think? Trump has been under a relentless assault from the moment he put his hand on the Bible and, agreed to uphold the oath. And yet the guy doesn't seem any worse for it, but all of his adversaries seem to be falling, they seem to be breaking down. They look at Hillary Clinton. She looks like she's been through a shredder. And you look at all of these guys and they are like wearing down, and they just can't keep up with him. Reporters, you name it.
I know it certainly seems to me that, God's hand is on this guy. Well, despite the unlikely, persona. Who else in the country could possibly have withstood this assault up to this point? Nobody that I know.
No.
I can't think of a single person in business and politics, nobody who has really had the same political philosophical ideas since he was a young man. And we have television tape to show that. And he finally ascends to the presidency, and he doesn't flinch. He's still going through with the most radical house cleaning this government has ever had, and does it need it?
Oh my God! It needs. I don't even want to tell you what part of the anatomy it really needs, but it's not a pleasant procedure, and all of these guys need to be gotten out of there. And the beauty, also, Bill, is you watching this, he exposed not just the Democrats; they were already pretty obvious what they stood for, but he opposed the so-called conservatives in the Republican Party and how no good they were, and how phony and how deceitful they've been. in both our lifetimes. They really have never wanted to fight progressivism. All they wanted was to have the ideological high ground when they were running. It was all a show. And I mean, we always knew this, but he just made it inescapably obvious. And for that, I think the whole country owes him a debt of gratitude.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Democrats have now had to retreat for some reason farther and farther left, where, you know, there's not much space between them and outright socialism or communism. And that's going to be a good thing. I do not look for major Republican losses this fall in November.
I rather doubt it, too. I just don't think it's going to happen. But, you know, it's, hey, we don't know yet. The future is always uncertain, but it doesn't seem to me what they call enthusiasm is hate. All right? They're driven purely by hate. And hate in the history of the democracy hasn't been enough to propel a political movement past the finish line. You have to stand for something. You can't just stand against, you know, your adversaries, your political adversaries. If you don't stand for something, you don't win. I think that was one of Hillary's biggest problems. What the heck did she stand for?
Well, besides the fact that she just had evil written all over her face.
Oh, yeah, I mean, of course. You know that.
That one Simpsons cartoon depicting that was really hilarious. You know, the way Trump has succeeded is he's not really a Republican. He's a populist in the mold of William Jennings Bryan, Abraham Lincoln before him, and Andy Jackson before him.
You nailed it.
That's what people have wanted. They want somebody to just go for what's wrong instead of go for what the party line is.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Trans political parties, the political parties are just a kleptocratic form of rule. They're corrupt organizations. In fact, I think they passed a law to deal with these political parties. It was called RICO, Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act. And they should all be brought up on RICO charges because, well, that's the thing. Schweitzer, his book on, what was it? I can't remember, the book before last, where he was talking, throw them all out. He said he looked at every single congressman's finances and senator's finances. There was only one guy who was completely squeaky clean, not cashing in on the office. Do you know who that person was?
No.
Jeff Sessions. Jeff Beauregard. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. This is another reason why the left really hates the guy. Jefferson was a slave owner, right? And Beauregard, that was like that's something in the Civil War. I can't remember who he was. General Beauregard. In any event, right. All the more reason to hate Sessions. But he was the only clean one, you know, squeaky clean. Nothing even in the gray area. You know, the guy's probably worth $350,000. You know, he's been working for the government his whole life and doesn't seem to owe anybody. So that's one thing that makes me believe maybe Sessions has more on board than you think. Anyway, we got to get going here, but go over to billstill.com. You can check out Bill's work. Also, his YouTube channel gets a zillion views. It's the Still Report. And hey, we'll have a link in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Again, join the discussion, join the debate. Send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. The Twitter feed's @KerryLutz. And for now, we'll keep a Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. But Bill, what's going on with Fakebook there? I would just as soon dump it tomorrow.
I would too. The only reason I use it, all my personal information in Facebook is all fake. My date of birth, where I live, everything is all fake now.
Same here. Like, never ever give Facebook your phone number, because all people have to do, if they have a number, you just type it into Facebook, and if anyone has that number associated with a profile, they know exactly who you are. So never, ever give your phone number to Facebook. They don't need it. Oh, but in order to verify you easier, and it's just going to make your life so much easier. You know, why don't you just give them some DNA while you're at it, Bill? Anyway, we got to run. But we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for being on, as always.
Okay, bye-bye.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.